Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 news. I was going to cover this in a stream later today, but I wanted to just get this out as quickly as possible because it is pretty big news. Creative Assembly has announced the old friends, and it's GOTREK and FELIX. So I had speculated for a few different possibilities, but this is definitely one of them. Yeah, legendary adventurers, much beloved by the community, will be making their way to Total War Warhammer 2, recruitable by Bretonnia, the Dwarfs, and the Empire, of course, through an event in-game. Basically, they will show up in your campaign for about 20 turns or so, and then eventually they will leave, and then, you know, sort of come back and return, and sort of go back and forth throughout the campaign, it seems like. Yeah, so as to what the characters are themselves, what their stats are, what their cost is, I'm not really sure. I haven't had, they haven't given us access to them yet. Hopefully, as soon as I get my hands on them, I will let you guys know. Obviously, they'll be in campaign, so you guys can see here, it is a little bit of an interesting deal as to what they have done before in the past with Grombrindle. He will be, they will be available exclusively with the White Dwarf magazine until October 17th, I think it is, something like that. I better double check here. Yeah, 17th of October is when they will become free for everyone through Total War Access. All of you should have a Total War Access account already. That's how you get the 30th Anniversary Regiments of Renown for Bretonnia, Chaos, Beastmen, Wood Elves, those factions. You'll need a Total War Access account anyway to get those Regiments of Renown, so you should have one already. If not, be sure to sign up. Or if you're a White Dwarf subscriber or you want to pick up a copy of the White Dwarf magazine, then the next issue will be will have these guys in them. So yeah, it's they sort of explain their rationale as to why they do it this way. I'm not the biggest fan, but at the end of the day, if it means that GOTREK and FELIX get added to the game where they otherwise wouldn't have been, I'm fine with that. You know, if it takes a small period of exclusivity in a White Dwarf magazine to get GOTREK and FELIX, then that's okay with me. Eventually they will be free for everyone, and yes, they are available in custom battles and non-campaign multiplayer. So they won't be available in a head-to-head campaign or a co-op campaign, but they are available in custom battles and in non-campaign multiplayer. So again, I haven't seen their stats, I don't know what the balancing is going to be, but potentially very interesting to have more hero selections for Bretonnia, for the Dwarfs, and for the Empire. The Empire, of course, already has excellent hero selections. But Bretonnia and the Dwarfs don't have the biggest hero selections. They have relatively limited selections. So having a Slayer hero, I'm assuming that GOTREK's going to have anti-large and just be, you know, unbreakable, very scary melee combatant. I'm not really sure about FELIX. We'll have to wait and see kind of what his deal is. He could maybe have some debuffs or some support characteristics. I'm not really sure, but it'll be interesting to see. Certainly, I think having an unbreakable anti-large infantry hero could be actually quite useful for certain factions. Bretonnia springs to mind, especially having him help anchor your line of peasants, because he's not going to run away. He'll encourage the rest of them, you know. It could be interesting, potentially, so I'm very, very interested to get my hands on them and give them a try. Of course, as soon as I can, I will bring that to you guys. I do not have access to them yet, but we'll try and get it soon. Next, we've got this massive set of patch notes released officially today. And holy guacamole, we've got a ton of patch notes here. I'm not going to go through a lot of this. It's primarily talks about, you know, a lot of campaign stuff that's not super applicable to my channel. Of course, I'll have a link down in the description below for those of you guys who want to go read it, or I'm sure other people will be going more in depth on these patch notes here for the campaign side. It talks about the Empire rework, the Slann rework, multiplayer unit caps, which I have talked about in a previous video. If you guys want to check that out, I will have a link in the description below. Yeah, very, very interesting. I'm a big fan. Yeah, there's some other big headline fixes, just lots of bug fixes and quality of life improvements, as you would expect. Tons and tons of battle fixes and improvements and everything. So yeah, it's good stuff. All the bug fixes are welcome. So yeah, we're gonna quickly though go to mostly the balance changes, right? Because that's mostly what you guys are here for on this channel, with the multiplayer balance changes. So let's get to it. Character and unit balancing. So keep in mind that all of these health and everything adjustments are on ultra size, but let's get to it. Beast Lord and Kazrak, and in fact, most Lords on foot, as you will see throughout this, most Lords on foot got a cost reduction, including some that probably shouldn't have, like Morker. He only got minus 50 cost. Most got minus 100 cost, so you will see that pretty much across the board. Minotaurs, all Minotaurs got a slight speed buff. They can now hide in forests, which it was ridiculous they couldn't before, so that's great. And they also got plus 5 leadership, which is huge. All Minotaurs also got minus 4 melee attack, or sorry, this is the dual weapon variant. Minus 4 melee attack, but plus 18 bonus versus infantry, which is massive. That is so good. And plus 100 cost, that's fine. Minotaurs with great weapons get plus 1 splash attack max targets and a bit more attack power, so they do better splash damage. That should make them even better against heavy cavalry. Butchers of Kalkengard got the same buffs, and also they changed the calculation for XP chevrons. You'll see this as well reflected in all of the regiments of renown here. All of them got slightly more melee attack and slightly less melee defense. Previously, the formula for XP chevrons would give out melee defense more than melee attack. Now that has been somewhat more evened up, so that it's a more even spread between melee attack and melee defense. So you'll see as a result, again, all the regiments of renown have had that change as well. Chaos Spawn and Giants both got minus 100 cost. I'm a huge fan of this change. Chaos Spawn for the Beastmen were already pretty good because of the poison. Giants, of course, for every race that can take them. It's always nice to have a bit cheaper. They're not the best monster in the world, so yeah, that's nice. Ungor Spearmen, all variants have Vanguard deployed and deployment and stock, which is great, so they now fit in with the rest of the Ungors, including the Destroyers of Drakewald. Eye of Morslib and again, other regiments of renown getting the same changes. For Bretonia, changes to Lords on foot and on the Barded Warhorse. And you'll see also reflected quite a few mounts got expensive for certain characters as well. So, you know, that keep in mind that taking a character on a warhorse can now be slightly more expensive. Green Knight, Sacred Guardian is now free. Okay, so he, I guess, will be a little bit cheaper then. Grail Knights got a little bit of a buff, plus 1 melee attack, plus 1 AP damage. That's really nice. Pegasus Knights, plus 5 leadership, tweaked animations for charging into land units to improve charges. That's great. Their charge animations have been really janky for a long time, so I really hope that we can get that tested out, see how well the Royal Pegasus Knights are working. Again, changes to regiments of renown, and this one here, projectile explosions ignore allies. So I did play a game with this, and you guys will see that later. I was confused about this. The explosions themselves ignore allies, but the projectiles, if it hits a unit model, will still do damage to friendlies. So it's not really, I mean, it's okay. It's not that good of a buff, but it's something. For the Dark Elves, again, Lords on foot getting more cost. Cold One did get slightly cheaper. So yeah. You'll also see this reflected quite a few times, this large entity group ground effect stat group. That basically applies to things like forests and swamps. Units that are being updated previously did not use the appropriate ground effect group, so if, for example, they wouldn't get debuffed in forest, or they would, you know, depending on the situation. So yeah. Let's see here. Raven Heralds can no longer hide in forests because flying units can't hide, and they did get a bit more health, which is nice because they are very glass cannon-y. Cold One Chariots got plus 100 cost, which is totally fine with me. Knights of the Ebon Claw and, again, other regiments of renown getting the same changes. Reaper Bolt Thrower, the anti-infantry shot now has plus 3 bonus versus infantry per projectile. That will actually help that be somewhat more useful. The multi-shot is not wildly useful to begin with, so anyway. Ethereal Dwarf Heroes got a little bit of a buff. That's great. And of course, dwarfs in general, you'll see this hit, reaction, ignore, knock, interrupt, ignore. So dwarf heroes should just get knocked around and staggered a little bit less now, which is great. Rune Lord, yeah. Let's see here. You'll see that hit reaction chance. A bit of melee stat changes here for the Thane. It looks like he got a little bit of a buff as well. Quite a bit more mass, melee attack, melee defense, better AP damage, and better base melee damage. So the Thane actually getting a significant buff here. Interesting, and it does look like that also applies to the Lord potentially as well. They have less total splash attack targets, so they're not going to be as good saturated in an infantry brawl, but they'll be much better at fighting other characters because of that extra AP damage. Belagar looks like got the same treatment. Yeah, plus 5 melee defense only. Grombrindle, Mostly just the hit reaction and interrupt, but he got a lot of interrupt. Wow, that's interesting. And plus 600 mass, quite a few mass changes as well. Plus 200 across the board. Ungrim got plus 600 as well. Yeah, very interesting. Thorgrim got a little bit more AP damage versus his base melee damage there. Flame Cannon got more expensive, but got significantly more damage. And the projectile calibration area is less. I think that means it's more accurate, and that the projectiles will fly for a longer distance, but interesting. Organ Gun, same thing. It should be more accurate now. Goblobber, okay, so that's mostly just Regiments of Renown. Miners got plus 2 melee attack. That's actually really nice. Plus 25 cost for the blasting charges is probably okay. Bugman's Rangers also got plus 50 cost, which is probably good. But you'll notice with all of the crossbows, they got plus 2 AP projectile damage, plus 2 projectile damage, and plus 3 reload time. That does include the Empire crossbows, as you'll see later. Basically, this was done to just differentiate crossbow units a little bit more from bow units, so they hit harder, but they do have a slightly longer reload time, with better AP values, of course. That applies to all the crossbow type units. Ekron's Miners, and again, Regiments of Renown, as seen before, getting the changes. Brimstone Guns now have a plus 15 bonus versus large on their projectile. That's great. Actually, have not tried this out yet, but that's pretty nice. And Dwarf Warriors with great weapons got plus 2 melee attack, which is nice because their melee attack was terrible. Moving on to the Empire, of course, getting tons and tons of changes in many areas in this DLC. And yeah, cost changes to Lords on Foot and War Horses and everything. Empire Wizards got slightly more expensive on horses. Jade Wizard, Grey Wizard can no longer hide in forests on Pegasus, which I didn't even know that was a thing. Amber Wizard got more health on the Griffin. I have absolutely felt this already. He previously had just way too low of health. 560 is a huge buff as well, so I'm a huge fan. I love the Amber Wizard already, so I love this buff. Crossbowmen, you'll see the same thing as with Dwarf Crossbows. They also got a little bit more expensive to differentiate them from archers. Yeah, Sunmaker got plus 1 melee attack, but yeah, again, just the Regiments of Renown in general getting improved. Steam Tank got plus 2 melee attack, so hey, I'm happy about that one. Let's see here. Demigryph Knights, the Lance variant, got minus 50 cost. And yeah, the Outriders and Pistoliers now have better reload animations, so they should actually function a little bit better even. As for greenskins, Grimgore, increased acceleration, deceleration, plus 10 hit reaction, knockdown, and minus 100 cost. And so yeah, he'll get knocked around a little less, hopefully, similar to the dwarf heroes, and minus 100 cost is always nice. I still think he needs more significant buffs than this, but I'm assuming they're just waiting for the greenskin update, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, more cost reductions across the board for Lords on Foot and certain mount types, and mostly just changes to the Regiments of Renown. Arachnarok Queen, yeah, mostly. Doom Divers got plus 50 cost. I do think Doom Divers need to do a little bit more damage, actually, but anyway. Giants got minus 100 cost as well, as they did with other rosters. Moving on to the High Elves, Alariel on foot got minus 50, but on the Elven Steed is plus 50. I think that's actually really good. Princess got plus 5 projectile mass. Hopefully that means her bow will start to cut through units like other hero types do. Her bow usually stops with the first unit model, so that's actually a pretty nice change there. Let's see here. Not really too many. The Grey got minus 50 cost, which is okay. The Storm Riders did as well. A lot of the Regiments of Renown, I think, for the High Elves are way too expensive, but it is what it is. Dragon Prince has also got minus 100 mass, which I'm not really sure about that one, but anyway. Lizardmen, Krokgar got plus 5 leadership and minus 100 cost on foot. That's great. Nazamundi on his chair got plus 50 cost. That's fine. Lots of cost changes here to various lords, as we've seen with other matchups. Lord Croak also got plus 300 multiplayer cost. That's great. Hunting packs are slightly improved. They have less AP but better base damage to sort of differentiate them from the what are they? The Razordons. And yeah, same thing with the Ancient Salamander. Actually got slightly better AP values. But yeah, Kroxigors slightly reduced charge distance, but they got a little bit of a damage buff in melee to help compensate for the new versions of Kroxigors. Well, of course. Minus 10 armor to all Ancient Stegodons and all Stegodons. That's very interesting. Yeah. I think that puts it down to 100, I want to say, but I think that's a pretty good change. Let's see here. Ground stat effect groups. Rev Crystal finally has casting animations. That's great. Let's see here. Regiment of Renown changes. All Temple Guard -1 melee attack. It feels a little bad, but that's probably fine. Norske the Mammoth. Wolfric on the Mammoth got quite a bit less health. In general, Mammoths actually got quite a bit less health in order to differentiate them, I think, a little bit from the Dreadsaurians. Yeah. Feral Mammoth now has forest penalties. Aw, feels bad. Changes to Regiments of Renown, as you would expect. Warhounds, let's see here. Yeah, all Norscan Warhounds, or sorry, just Norscan Warhounds, not the Ice Wolves, now have Vanguard deployment. Let's see here. Hunters with Javelins got +50, and Throwing Axes got -50. Famir Warriors got less charge, melee attack, a little bit more leadership, though, and are more expensive. That's totally fine. The Famir were really, really good before, so I think that's a well-warranted change. Warriors with Great Weapons got a similar change. Of course, the Miststalkers as well. Norscan Giant got cheaper, of course. Skin Wolves got a slightly higher charge bonus, which is all right. And, yeah. Just getting bug fixes again for the stat effect group there. Moving on to Skaven, we've got some minor cost reductions here for Tretch, Ikit on foot, and Queek as well. That's really nice, actually, for Queek. Warlock Master is slightly cheaper on foot as well. Assassin's cheaper, Plague Priest is cheaper. Warlock Engineer is slightly more expensive. The Bonebreaker looks like it got a little bit of a buff. Increased splash attack force by 50%. That sounds pretty significant. All Warp Fire Throwers got slightly more health. That's great, I guess. Hell Pit Abominations fixed. Rat Ogres are fixed. Regiment of Renown changes as we would expect. Censor Bears also got -50 cost, which is nice. Storm Vermin with Halberds got +1 melee defense. That's pretty decent. And yeah, the Jezzails. Jezzails got a pretty significant nerf. -25 range, +50 cost for the Natty Bubo Sharpshooters. And yeah, they also increased the projectile expiration range. I'm not really sure. But yeah, it does seem like they nerfed the reload time as well. I don't know if they actually listed that here, but it seems like they did in-game, at least from my own experience. But anyway, so Jezzails did get a bit of a nerf there. Moving on to Tomb Kings, we've got, again, some minus cost on foot for some lords, as you would expect. Nehekara Horsemen got less mass, a little bit higher charge bonus, but less melee defense. That's fine. They're still one of the best medium cav in the game. Necropolis Knights got a pretty significant buff. Charge bonus, melee defense, AP, and damage. Let's see here. Same with the Necropolis Knights with Halberds. Necrosphinx now has forest terrain penalties. Let's see. Same for the Scorpion. Carrion are slightly more expensive. That's fine. The Blessed Legion actually got +20 reload skill, so the Regiment of Renowned Skeleton Archers, that's quite nice. You don't see them used super often, so I do quite like that. Let's see, Skeleton Spears, +1 bonus versus large. Okay, that's quite nice, and they have a faster attack interval. Same with the Scorpion Legion. Kepler Guard got a pretty significant melee stat buff. That's good, because they were just so trash before. +3 melee attack, +7 melee defense, less AP, but they did get a +9 bonus versus infantry. That's pretty significant. So, let's see here. Sepulchral Stalkers got +1 ammo. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, Casket of Souls got +2 projectiles per volley. Completely broken. Just kidding. Moving on now. We just got a couple more with, 3 more factions here to go. Vampire Coast. Arnessa's a bit cheaper on foot and on the Brooding Promethean. That's nice. Don't see Arnessa too much. I quite like her, though. Silostra is a little bit cheaper as well. A little bit better in melee. That's cool. So basically just buffing Arnessa and Silostra to help see them more often. I quite like that. Gunnery White on foot, also minus cost. Bloated Corpse, this is immediately the first change I saw. Bloated Corpse is less cost, -75 cost. All Depth Guard now have slightly better health, which is good. Bloody Reavers got a little bit of a buff, the Regiment of Renown. Syrene's got better leadership. Rotting Leviathan, same with Silostra, does slightly more base damage. Deckhand Mobs got less health per entity, and -5 doesn't seem like a lot, but remember, these guys have a ton of unit models, so you multiply it across an entire unit, and that is a significant health nerf to Deckhand Mobs, and I am a huge fan of that change. -5 leadership as well. It just means they'll crumble a little bit easier. Yeah. Night Terrors got -3 melee defense. That's good. They just straight up are super strong. Gallows Giant, it increased the expiration range of the projectile, and also, Looks like a melee defense nerf. That's fine. So yeah, pretty good stuff. Bombers got cheaper, but the handguns got more expensive for deck droppers. And yeah, the Salt Lord Scuttlers also got plus 100 cheaper. Or sorry, minus 100 cheaper. Yeah, good stuff. I think that it's an interesting one. I think I would have liked to have seen maybe some minor nerfs for Harkon, but honestly, I think this looks pretty good. We'll see, especially for Empire and Lizardmen, it should still be tough, although I think it's doable. But yeah, definitely interesting. For the counts, a lot of cost reductions on foot. Vlad, it's just straight up because he can't take him out. Same with Heinrich. Isabella is just straight up cheaper. Manfred is just straight up cheaper. Yeah, a lot of lords on foot costing quite a bit cheaper as well. So, interesting. Banshees got cheaper as well. Hex Wraiths got plus 2 charge bonus in leadership, as did Karen Wraiths. Chill Guys got much better melee attack for almost no downside and plus 2 leadership. Skeleton Spearmen got 1 additional bonus versus large, absolutely broken. Crypt Horrors, this is also something I noticed, got plus 5 damage in total, 2 AP with 3 base. It's something. Crypt Horrors are still going to be very squishy, but I do think that they'll be able to get a bit more damage out now. Varix Reavers, again, Regiments of Renown getting changes. Let's see here. Yeah, that's pretty much the rest. Moving on to the Warriors of Chaos, and sorry, we've got 2 more factions, guys. Warriors of Chaos and Wood Elves here. Archaon, Sigvald, more cost reductions on foot. Chaos Steed getting slightly more expensive for the Sorcerer Lords, but less expensive for the Melee Lords, as in line with the rest. Let's see here. Dragon Ogres got plus 15 armor, which is alright. Summoners of Rage got plus 50 cost, and the appropriate plus 15 armor. Let's see here. Swords of Chaos. This is a change that I had noticed almost immediately. They got plus 10 melee attack, 3 melee defense, which is really nice. Plus 10 AP melee damage, plus 5 base melee damage. They lost their bonus versus infantry, so basically they just converted their bonus versus infantry into melee stats, and that just makes them much, much better in general. I have actually had some reasonably good success with them in this patch, so I think you will start to see these guys a little more often. They're still going to be a tough unit to make work in certain matchups, but I do think you will see them occasionally. Chaos Knights as well, just, I guess this is the sword and board version, or maybe both. They don't specify. Got more damage as well, which is nice. I think this is the sword and board version, like the power swords, but anyway. Let's see here. Again, Giants and Spawn got cheaper. Sarthrel got minus 10 missile resistance, which is fine. And again, Chaos Warhounds got Vanguard deployment. Moving on to Wood Elves, Orion got Vanguard and slightly more expensive. Durthu got more armor, as did the Ancient Tree Man, which is nice. The Ancient Tree Man also got a little bit cheaper, which is really nice. I like using him quite a bit, so that's a great change for me. Branch Wraith is now immune to Psych and slightly cheaper as well. Blade Lords, both varieties, on foot got cheaper. Spell Singers on the Steed got more expensive, in line with everything else. Waystalkers also slightly cheaper. Wild Hunters of Kurnos, this was a very interesting change, and I actually like this quite a bit. They no longer have Guardian, which is okay. You didn't really get that much value from it before anyway, but they now have magic attacks and plus 13 bonus versus large. They also are slightly more expensive as a result, but that plus 13 bonus versus large is quite good, and I do feel like this is specifically a buff to the Bretonia matchup, so that the Wild Hunters of Kurnos can try and at least, countercharge, maybe not directly countercharge, but at least like rear charge or try and force a favorable engagement on some Grail Knights, and they now have the damage to actually, deal with them. We'll see if it actually ends up working out, but I do like that change quite a bit. Way Watchers got a little bit of a nerf and plus 50 cost. Treekin got plus 10 armor and Entity Radius. I don't really know what that means, but okay. Yeah, pretty good stuff. Tree Man also got armor. Again, Orion, yeah, they added that twice. Hawk Riders, Entity 12% wider. I think that means they're actually easier to hit, like their hitbox has been increased. Improved firing animations, interesting. Blade Riders got more leadership. Let's see, War Dancers got a little bit less melee attack, but melee defense. I think that's fine. That's a decent change. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the Wood Elves. That's it for most of the factions. Now we're just going to move on to ability changes, of which there are quite a few. And so here we go. Summon Unbindings. So you'll notice this now. It's color coded. So blue is for stable, orange is for 30 seconds, and red is for 5 seconds. Deliverance of Itza got a major nerf, less AP damage and more power cost. Shadows of Anlek, I'm not really sure what spell that is. I'm not familiar with that one. Fiery Convocation now got a significant buff, does fire damage. I have noticed this. I've used it a couple times, and it is quite strong now, including the Bound Fiery Convocation, of course, that Techless has. Pestilent Breath does less damage, which is fine. Wind Blast also does less damage, but does more detonation force, which means it's more likely to knock units over, I think. Don't quote me on that, but anyway. Exorcism, this is a change I love. The Lore of Light passive is now a map-wide AoE that affects all allies, gives immune to psychology and +4 leadership for 11 seconds. Whenever the wizard casts a spell, that is an awesome change. Makes Exorcism from one of the most useless lores of magic to one of the more useful ones, in my opinion, at least for maybe Lizardmen and Empire. Bestial Surge is a little bit of a vigor nerf, which is fine. Same thing with Plague Rash. It doesn't drain quite as much vigor, which is fine. Sunfang does a little bit less damage. Soulfire, this is, again, another change that I noticed, and you guys will see coming soon. No longer gives magic resistance. It doesn't affect allies, though, since they had to code that in with Lord Croak. And it now does quite a bit more damage. It says projectile damage from 26 to 1, but plus 200 in explosion radius. And it just, like, the explosion damage does a lot more. So, yeah. The Grand Soulfire did get tightened up, so it's the same area of effect. It's just now a more powerful version. Divine Power now has a map-wide radius, so you don't necessarily have to have your Archlector or Warrior Priest near the caster. It'll just be map-wide, but it's only 25% instead of 50%. Still, though, that's going to be nice for getting free damage on your opponent's caster for very, very little cost. Warrior Priest now is going to be a lot more expensive, and you're going to have to be a lot choosier if you don't want him to be super expensive about which buffs you're taking. So it should be very interesting. Fireball got a little bit of a nerf as well. Let's see here. Upgraded Fireball got more AP, but less 70% base projectile damage. Okay, so it does significantly less total damage, but it does a little bit more AP when you overcast it, but just both versions do way less total damage as well. Liber Bubonicus and all of the other direct damage single target spells got a minus 0.1 damage chance, so they'll do a little bit less damage. Warpstone Armor got nerfed. Rune of Wrath and Ruin, this is a very interesting change. The speed increase nerf has been increased to 72% and 72% charge speed as well, but it no longer deals direct damage, and it has been increased to 200 meters. Rune of Wrath and Ruin, Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin, that is the same. Doom Bolts also got a little bit of a buff, bigger shockwave radius, okay. Dreaded 13th also is a little bit better as well, more explosion damage. It already did quite a bit of explosion damage, so that is quite interesting. I'm very curious to see how that one works out. Bombs, Gyrocopter Bombs got bigger damage, which is awesome. Comet of Cassandora also got even better, so it is now a massive delete use spell. Uranus Thunderbolt also got significantly better as well, so it looks like the other Lore of Heaven spells getting buffed is going to help you, not just going to only be the Wind Blast lore, if you will. So, yeah, good stuff. Let's see here. The Mammoth, the War Shrine buff no longer gives Unbreakable, but instead gives plus 26 melee attack, 16 leadership, and has a 13-second duration. Added max 3 uses. That plus 26 melee attack is huge. I'm actually really curious to try that out. I've not seen that. Yeah. The Spider Hatchlings, a lot of the summons getting some timing changes. Spiteful Shot lasts longer, okay, as does Malcolm's Mind Razor. Cloak of Mist and Shadows lasts longer, okay. Fists of Gork, so quite a few buffs to various buffs, which is hilarious. -1 power cost for Gazer and Nagash, okay. Night Shroud got a bit cheaper, as did Shem's Burning Gaze, Banishment, Barona's Time Warp, I like all of those. Dwellers Below, awesome. A lot of just -1 power cost for quite a few different spells here, which is great. -2 actually for Night Shroud, that's really nice. Let's see here. Warp Lightning got slightly more expensive, though, which is probably fine. Skitter Leap is -3. Wow, so that is pretty significant. You might actually see Skitter Leap occasionally now. Although, yeah, with the Skaven, you can usually just outshoot most people. Not really too much of a reason to use that, but maybe if you wanted to. This is, I believe, something that the Dark Elf item, the Dark Elf Canine Assassin has. I don't remember exactly, but Hand of Glory no longer gives speed and now gives a much bigger reload skill instead. Very interesting. Stone Shaper, I'm not super familiar with that buff. Bunch of changes to items here, looks like, including Queek's Warp Shard armor. That's nice. Dark Mail is also a little bit better. They've been consistently buffing Dark Mail for Kazarak for many years, so that's great. Interesting. I'm not familiar with all of these. I think some of these are campaign only items, but yeah, nevertheless, the changes are still here. Blood Greed is only activates in melee, no longer increases speed, but increases leadership more. That's the one that the Minotaurs have. Tretch's Raiders is now always active and targets other units that are winning within his area of effect. So Tretch himself doesn't have to be winning because he often is not, let's be real. It's just the other units within the effect have to be winning. So yeah, a little bit of a change there. Quicksilver Shot reduced to a common ability. Okay, that's good for the High Elves, I guess. Shield of Chakwa added max 3 uses, and it has a smaller area of effect. I did notice that. Probably a decent change. And a Portion of Chiroi for Techless also has max 4 uses. They also go through to talk about some modding stuff here, so for you modders out there, there's some new script events and other modding shenanigans going on, but that's pretty much it for what I wanted to cover. It's been a pretty long video, but there was a lot of patch notes to cover here, a lot of very minor changes. I'm curious to see how some of the more macro changes, though, for example, like just generally making casters on horseback more expensive, lords on foot and on horseback a little bit less expensive. I definitely think that making the lords on foot obviously is a direct buff to, say, dwarves and other lords who can only go on foot, like Grimgor and, you know, Sigvald and others. But it's a start in the right direction. I still think infantry lords have a long way to go, but it's a start. It's a start. Yeah. I don't really have too much else to say other than I'm very curious to jump in and get some of these, try out some of these changes. I already have tried some of them out, and for the most part, I agree with just about everything here. I do think that there are some things that need some additional changes, but that can be done in future patches, of course. Definitely looking good. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification, so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.